Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for Skeleton Crew episode 1 and 2. It's taken a few days to get around to this. A bunch of Avatar stuff happened basically in around the time the episodes dropped, but I watched them the day they came out, rewatched them again just prior to this video, so I'm now ready to talk about it. I'll lead straight away with the idea that I think I went into this show like with no real expectations. I hadn't really focused on it all that much. This has always just been, oh yeah, there's that other show that they're doing that I'm not really sure what the connection is, like what they're trying to do with this one. It seems to be vaguely part of the Mandoverse, being set in the kind of New Republic era, and there's some sort of a kind of adventure with kids. The Jude Law character is maybe going to be like a secret Jedi or something like that. The reality of it is that there's a little bit more going on than I expected, and it ended up being, I think, a very fun 2 episodes, and I'm very intrigued to see where this one goes. It's certainly, I think, not the show that is going to solve all of Star Wars problems as a franchise going forward when it comes to, you know, the big picture stuff. Does this show them the path forward for new movies? I don't think so. Does this solve their kind of issue of like making a good new attempt at the sequel trilogy with like the Rey movie and stuff like that? Not really, but this is, I think, just an example of telling a more simple story in the Star Wars universe, doing something a little bit different, but just solid fundamentals, just keeping the arcs relatively simple to the point, plus some mysteries and, you know, some decent production values, and I think you have something that's quite enjoyable here. I still sort of like question, maybe to a certain degree, with this one, where like obviously this is from a few years ago when they were kind of doing everything with Star Wars, all the projects they were announcing. This one's managed to get all the way through production in the same way that like the Acolyte got all the way through production. And I kind of feel like, have they already moved away from maybe doing stuff like this kind of going forward? Because I think they sort of figured out what they wanted to do, then they lost it again, and Star Wars just does remain in, I think, a very confused situation going forward, where this might present a weird thing where like, oh, so what people want is these very kind of basic to the point stories, and it's like, no, I think people like what's going on with this just because it seems solidly written, but it also is able to, I think, partly be solidly written because it's not being overly adventurous with its kind of broad level storytelling, and there still seems to be a sense of, I think, the fandom to a certain degree, or at least parts of the fandom, is very closed off to doing anything big with Star Wars, and it's going to be heavily criticized regardless of what you do. And I worry a little bit, but especially with just what happened with the Acolyte, this one won't get as much hate just by default, just because like so many of the main kind of cast members are kids, and then just I don't think it's doing so much that there's really that much there to criticize, because like I said, they're keeping it simple, and in many ways there's maybe not as much to talk about with these first 2 episodes as you might think, and in a way because of that there's maybe not that much to criticize. But let's kind of get into the details. Overall, like I said, I like these 2 episodes. It's fun, and that's the whole point of it. It's meant to be this kind of kids adventure show that has a little bit more going on than you might think in the background, and the overall core mystery is actually quite good, because the premise of this that we initially had is sort of the idea of like, was it like 4 children end up an adventure to make their way home after being lost in the galaxy following a discovery they make on their home planet. I think what at least I was not able to predict at all before going in actually watching the show was the idea that their home planet, and a lot of the history, I suppose, surrounding that, is actually a huge part of the mystery of the show. At Aten, and the fact that the outside world views it as this like legendary like treasure planet type place, whereas for these people, our main characters, it's just the place where they're from. They don't know any different, and they've been sort of sheltered from the outside world. And there's a bit of a sense of, it's a bit of a utopia, because it's like the Star Wars in the suburbs, but instead of it being an example of just, oh, this is a very normal kind of real world like planet in Star Wars, and we're just seeing it for the first time. It's odd because it's like that, and they're purposefully leaning into the idea of, for Star Wars, this is actually quite weird and odd, and you should be asking questions about this in regards to, like, I suppose, how many droids there are, how maybe protective they are about talking about the outside world, the fact that there is a barrier. Everyone seems to be aware that there is a barrier here that is dangerous to go outside of, which is, I suppose, fair enough to a certain degree, but at the same time, what specifically are you telling the people? What do they think will happen if you do leave the barrier? Apparently starships are not meant to come in or out, to the point where not many people are aware of that. So there's no real capacity to leave or want to leave. And there's very much a focus of, no, you have to do super well at the tests. You have to have a career path in mind from start to finish that you are directed towards. And if you are not laser focused, efficient in doing that, you are seen as someone who is kind of out of line to a certain degree. But then I think one of the more clever things they did here was sort of using the currency to kind of do a little bit of world building storytelling of, we open up with the pirate kind of raid on that vault, and the reveal that, oh, there's only one credit here. We thought it was going to be packed full of credits. This is terrible, mutiny. Then suddenly we cut to breakfast table, basically, and Wim's father hands him like a stack of gold Republic credits, and it's like, oh. And then in episode 2 we get the kind of further reveal that it's like, because we don't really have that much of a sense for like the denominations of these credits and stuff like that, but then they tell you that for him it's a week's worth of lunch money. And it's like, okay, it's an okay amount for like a week's worth of lunch, but it's not like a huge amount, to the point where he's wondering, like, oh, like a drink at like a pirate kind of bar type thing, is one enough compared to my lunch? Whereas they're like, oh, this is a legendary kind of currency. This is a very rare value item here that's actually worth a lot, and they try and scam him for it, and there's a big, it causes a kind of ruckus basically at the spaceport with all the other pirates, because it's these old Republic credits, which, again, maybe some clarification is needed here, because I think some of the terminology is a little bit confused here a little bit, because the subtitles say Old Republic, capital O, capital O, as in the era, the Old Republic, which is well before like the High Republic, well before the Republic, and especially well before the New Republic. It's just, can we call it something different to separate some of these kind of terms from each other a little bit, because there is some connection back to other stuff. It's not just that one reference to, older Republic stuff. Fern's mother also references Great Works, which is a High Republic term of, like, that's what was going on during the High Republic. The height of the Republic is that the Chancellor would do these giant projects to make things better in the Republic as a sign of how kind of prosperous times were. And this is apparently one of those great works. What's going on here? And it's like, is that going to be kind of what the reveal is? Is this like planet like protected from the outside world that, to a certain degree, is the barrier a kind of stealth shield to a certain degree around like an entire planet, that you don't see it on star charts, you can't scan to find it, and that's the real mystery here? Because what we eventually find out as we go through the episode is that the droid of the ship they find on the planet doesn't know about At-Aten. He has no idea where it is, doesn't seem to have heard about it, which sort of makes sense, because I'm guessing the legend of At-Aten happened sort of following that ship crash landing and being stuck on that planet. Whereas the pirates who've been active in the world since then have heard legends about this place as being a kind of treasure place. I'm guessing likely because of the history or legend of this specific pirate ship, which may or may not have helped to maybe create the situation that is currently happening on the planet. I still don't know exactly what to make of it all, because it's like, okay, let's say it is this kind of utopian kind of society, but like, who's kind of benefiting from it? Like, who's being kind of manipulated to a certain degree here? Because it doesn't immediately come across that way. Like, is this some special way of getting very efficient kind of workers for like the Empire or the New Republic by kind of lying to these people, letting them live these almost like perfect lives, but actually they're quite restricted in what they can do, and they just have to work at the end? I'm not sure what the full takeaway is on that side of things, but I'm definitely intrigued by it, because it makes me wonder, like, clearly Wim's father, there's maybe going to be a bit of a plot going on the planet here, because, like, I can't imagine we're just going to only focus on what's going on with the kids on the ship, and then they'll eventually get back here maybe at the end of the season. Kind of feels like his father's going to want to do something, and maybe some other people on the planet are going to find something out. But again, what exactly is going on, I don't really know. But yeah, the result of this is just that, like, the kids, the main kids, so we have Wim and Fern are our kind of main kind of female, male and female character, and then they sort of each have their sidekicks. So Wim has Neil, who's a quite fun character because he's like this kind of elephant blue alien character, who's quite fun, and I love the design. And then Fern's friend is this girl who has like a cybernetic implant and also visor. So there's a pretty decent kind of mix of characters here, and you can see the idea of sort of Fern is more of an out and out leader, wants the adventure and is sort of confident, whereas Wim is more, also kind of wants adventure but isn't super confident. But you can maybe see that some of his idealism, how he's looked into kind of like the history, the stories of like the Jedi and stuff like that, that's probably going to come into play as well to a certain degree. Which, just while I'm on that topic, that was kind of interesting as well. Multiple times in these episodes you saw him reading on his screen these Jedi stories. And it wasn't just maybe what you might think as being the obvious thing of just like, oh, he knows the Luke Skywalker story, which might be the obvious thing. But clearly, they view things as still being under maybe the Republic or Old Republic or High Republic. Maybe not aware that it's the New Republic now. So whatever Jedi stories they are, they're probably older stories that are High Republic or Old Republic Jedi stories, which, again, what exactly the take on that is, I'm not sure, which makes it interesting that they're theoretically introducing a Force user character at the end, who, again, are they a Jedi in this era that would make them either someone who is Force sensitive, who has sort of developed their skills on their own, or probably an Order 66 survivor type thing. And I don't really know what the full kind of scope on that really is. But yeah, so far I think the main kind of kid characters here seem pretty fun. We definitely needed more episodes to get into this to see what exactly the full dynamic is, because so far I think for the first two episodes it's mainly just, okay, adventure, clearly highlighting two of them as being more kind of leaders over the other two, but I suppose some of the character dynamics are going to start to develop as we go forward. Especially because, effectively what feels like the show's main character in the Jude Law character is only introduced right at the end here. Though there's also some interesting stuff around him, because there's obviously been the rumors around this show that like he was a Force sensitive character. That ends up being sort of the introduction here at the end, is that they're thrown into prison, and he is about to basically get them out by using the Force to grab the keys. Now, the obvious point here is, if he could do that the entire time, why has he been waiting there this whole time? I guess he maybe doesn't feel confident enough to just on his own get out, especially not having like a ship. Like, he can get himself out, but where does he go from there? Whereas the kids actually have the ship, he can, you know, do something because some new pieces have entered the board effectively. Now, I suppose just because it is a mystery show, you're kind of inclined to be like, are they telling the truth here with this, or is this some sort of a wire trick type thing when it comes to his force pull here? And then, because I don't think he maybe was aware, like they were talking about Jedi temples, I suppose, just prior to the scene. I don't know, maybe I'm just being too suspicious of a mystery show trying to kind of outfox me or something like that. But either way, there's interesting stuff with this character just on the basis of that. Plus what seems like another relatively obvious thing that you maybe question of, is this character absolutely the captain who was mutinied on in the opening scene of the first episode, where when the vault door opens and there's only one credit, he seemingly gets captured and mutinied upon, overtaken. I'm assuming they're the same, but it almost feels too obvious that that's the case, in the same way that it almost feels a bit too perfect that he's also like a Force user right as they get locked up. But I suppose that's maybe part of the character that they're going for here, is that I'm eager to properly meet this character, I'm assuming, in the next episode, and if there's any way they can't do the proper introduction of him next. And then the question is, okay, now that this has happened, they're going to escape. He is working with them, they're using him to kind of theoretically get back home. Like, then what? Like, is it about getting home while not bringing the pirates to Aten? But then theoretically he is a pirate in some way. So what is the goal? What is the history of what's actually happened here? Is it just about money? And then how do they go about doing something with whatever the whole, like, what's being hidden from the population on Aten plot is, in that, like, what are they being used for? Who is the villain in this, in reality, apart from pirates? There's some questions here, but I think that's what makes the show actually quite interesting. So, I'm just pretty much going to wrap it up there before I start repeating myself, and just be like, so far so good, I think, with this show. While also at the same time acknowledging that I don't think this show solves the Disney Star Wars problems that they have, but it certainly shows that they can still make good Star Wars shows. Like, I've liked most of the Disney Plus Star Wars shows. I've liked most of the Disney Star Wars stuff in general. I think they did miss a bit with the sequel trilogy, and now they're trying to sort of relaunch the sequel trilogy with the Rey stuff, and I hope that goes well for them. It's just, I think I just view what happened with the Acolyte as being like a major negative for the whole kind of like franchise direction going forward. The budget obviously seems like the main problem there, so, but I just find it weird that they rushed to cancel it, I think, very quickly, without even considering, like, hey, can we make a season 2 with like a much less budget so it comes across a little bit better? But I don't really know. But yeah, good stuff so far. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on Skeleton Crew episodes 1 and 2. And I'm not going to commit to, for sure, doing a review every single week, just because there's coming up to a busy time of the year. At the very least, you will on the channel see me talk about every episode of the show. So I might be grouping up 2 episodes here, 2 episodes there. There might be some weeks where I do the individual episode review. I will cover them, and there won't be a giant gap between covering things. So just be aware of that. But let me know your thoughts below. That's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.